Hi and welcome back to Garden Ninja. Now today's video guide is going to show you 15 plants that slugs and snails absolutely hate. So if you want low maintenance gardening where the slugs disappear off to other people's gardens, then this guide is for you. So come on, let's get cracking. Now slugs and snails can be a real pain in the garden. You put in loads of effort planting up your flower beds, and then you come out one morning and all of a sudden all of the foliage has been decimated by their rasping little mouths that are eating away at all that beautiful greenery. So this guide is going to show you my top 15 plants that slugs and snails absolutely hate. If you've not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, hit the red button to subscribe today. Also click the bell for notifications. We'll have access to hundreds of garden design hints, tips and hacks from me, the Garden Ninja. And best of all, it's free. Now slugs and snails tend to prefer young fresh foliage. They also don't like coarse, hairy or really waxy leaves. It makes it harder for them to rasp and eat their way through the leaf, and it also means that they have a harder time sliding over with all of that slime and mucus to get onto the plants, and that's key when picking these plants. Now the first plant is Alchemilla mollis, otherwise known as lady's mantle, and it's a real bulletproof herbaceous perennial, meaning it comes back year after year. Now Alchemilla mollis has a secret weapon, which is its tiny hair-covered leaves that means that the slugs and snails always give it a bit of a swerve. The beauty of Alchemilla mollis is that when it rains or when there's dew in the garden, it tends to bead and pool off the leaves, giving this real alchemy-like appearance. They self-seed readily, they will grow in pretty much any soil and any conditions, and it's my number one slug-proof plant in the garden. The next slug-proof plant are hardy geraniums. No, we're not talking about pelargoniums, the granny's garden favourite that usually live in porches and greenhouses. We're talking about the true, tough, hardy geraniums. They come back year after year and slugs and snails will always avoid them. And that's because they give off a very distinct aroma that puts off slugs and snails. They don't like those heady aromatic scents. The other beauty of hardy geraniums, such as Johnson's Blue, is that they can propagate really easily through division. And they also bulk up quickly, meaning that in the garden you can fill your borders full of these great flowers at a low cost. The other beauty about most hardy geraniums is that they flower for a really long period of time, meaning that they're super tough. You have to do barely anything with them and they will tolerate most soils and even a bit of partial shade. Now another wonderful group of flowering herbaceous perennials are the Penstemons, and they seem to be a bit overlooked by beginner gardeners, and I'm not sure why, because slugs and snails will avoid them at all cost. But unlike some of the other plants we've discussed that are ground cover, Penstemons are reaching for the stars. And in the middle of summer, they're covered in these bright, sort of trumpet-shaped flowers that come all the way down the central stem. And the beauty of Penstemons is, if you're in a relatively mild area, they're semi-evergreen, meaning that they will last throughout the winter, give a bit of greenery before next spring. Now you tend to get Penstemons in the blue, red and purple spectrum of colours, and this can add real drama to the garden in the middle of summer. If you live somewhere a bit colder, you'll need to protect them throughout the winter. It's to leave them throughout the winter with the foliage on, and if the frost wants to batter it a bit in the spring, I just give them a neaten up and a tidy. The next plant group is one of my favourites, and that's the geum. It looks a little bit like a hardy geranium, but it's got a much longer flowering window, and the leaves are covered in these tiny little hairs that slugs and snails will avoid. The beauty of geums is that they work well in the ground as well as containers, so if you've got a small garden or a balcony, geums are a real winner. You can get them in all sorts of different colours, from orange, yellow, red, and even tiny pink ones such as the pink petticoat variety. The great thing with geums is that slugs and snails won't touch them, but they also flower from around May all the way through to October in certain climates. Another slug-proof secret weapon plant are Mollinia, and they're a grass. Now Mollinia are fantastic because they've got these slightly serrated blades on the foliage, which both snails and slugs tend not to go near. The other beauty about Mollinia is that they self-seed everywhere. Now Mollinia love bright, sunny, free draining conditions. So if you've got a dry garden that's a bit on the nutrient poor side, then Mollinia are a fantastic choice. They send up these beautiful tufts of green foliage, and then you get these small dainty seed heads and flowers that sort of flop about in the summer. As I said, they'll self-seed everywhere. You can easily dig them up, give them away as plant presents for your friends, or simply compost them. But they come back year after year and are a real winner in the garden. Another plant that you've probably already got in your gardens are foxgloves, and slugs will not touch these. Once again, foxgloves have that slightly hairy leaf that puts them off. The great thing about foxgloves is they are biennial, so they will grow foliage in year 1 and then flower in year 2 before setting seed and then dying back. But because you've got this 2-year cycle, it means that you can keep your gardens going by letting them go to seed. If you let them go to seed, then each year you're going to get a mix of foliage and flowers, and that cycle will continue. The beauty about foxgloves is they're super cheap to grow yourself from seed. You can pick up a packet for around £1 or even $1, sow them in pots or even directly out in the garden, and then the next year you're going to get flowers. They're a really good value plant. Also, honeybees absolutely love them. They're full of pollen and they're going to give that real cottagey feel to any garden. Now the next plant group that are slug proof is the genus known as Carex, and they look a bit like grasses, although they're actually a sedge. Now they would grow in the wild in damp conditions on the edge of woodlands where you've got a bit of dappled shade, and they're completely bomb-proof. They've got evergreen foliage in the form of these strappy leaves, and some of them will either send up spikes of flowers or have some variegation on the leaf, meaning that all year round you've got some interest with them. And Carex are great because they add movement and drama to the border and really add a bit of texture to an otherwise flat flower bed. And they're a bit of a hidden secret of mine in garden design. Euphorbia, or spurges, are also a surprising slug and snail proof plant genus, and that's because the sap inside them is a highly irritant liquid, and slugs and snails don't want any of that. There are a huge variety of euphorbias for your gardens, and I like to think of them as the aliens of the plant world. Once they land in your garden, they send up these really bizarre bracts and flowers that almost look like small cups, either limey yellow, pinks or bright neon greens, and they really pop up in a border. Now they are semi-evergreen, so they will survive throughout the winter in milder climates, but if you are going to prune out any frost damage or prune them back, make sure you wear gloves, because if not, you might wipe the sap on your face or it might irritate your skin. So brilliant for slugs, but just bear in mind that you need to be a bit more cautious when it comes to pruning them. Now another absolutely wonderful slug-proof plant are the Pulmonarias. Now these are also known as the lungworts, and they tend to flower really early in spring, meaning that when everything else is looking a bit sorry for itself, the Pulmonarias are there showing off their flowers. They're unusual because they've got polka-dotted leaves that have loads of tiny fine hairs on them, meaning that slugs and snails give them a miss. But they also are covered in a mass of different coloured flowers, and they self-seed really readily and tend to be quite promiscuous, meaning that if you have 2 different species of Pulmonaria, I guarantee in a few years they'll have been hybridised by bees, self-seeded, and all of a sudden you'll get a mix of the different colours on all sorts of baby Pulmonaria. And they're a great choice if you've got partial shade or you've got a garden that needs a bit of oomph in the springtime. Best of all, they multiply everywhere. You can dig them up and give them to your friends. Another gorgeous plant that is slug proof is Agastache, and I have a number of them here in the Exploding Atom Garden. The beauty about Agastache is that they love dry, full sun. They produce these spikes of either purple or blue flowers, and the benefit of that is that the bees absolutely love them. They're really high in pollen and they're pretty much bulletproof. They add a late season pop of purple or blue to the garden. I've grown them from seed. You can buy them as plug plants or even take divisions throughout the autumn and early spring to bulk up your garden borders. The thing to note about Agastache is they don't like heavy clay or waterlogged soils. So if you've got a really sunny garden that gets baked, they're the perfect choice for you. Now, Sedums are also a rather unlikely contender for a slug-proof plant. You've probably not considered them before, but these beautiful evergreen low-growing plants are absolutely wonderful for any garden, whether you've got a balcony, small garden, container garden, or even a large sprawling estate. Now, Sedums can cope with extreme temperatures, from really warm to really cold weather, and they send up flowers in the middle of summer that are great for really small insects, midges and bugs. Now, because they've got a really waxy coat around their leaves, slugs and snails will leave them alone. And there's an absolute plethora of different sedums you can use, whether you're using them for a green roof or whether you're picking those big creeping sedums in a rockery. They are well worth an investment in the garden. The next plant group are the Epimediums, and if you're wondering why I'm stood under a tree, bent over backwards, it's because this is the perfect place for them. It's in dry shade. So this part of the garden is really dry. We've got this evergreen oak that provides loads of shade. And usually plants for dry shade are hard to come by, but Epimediums are wonderful. They're also super slug proof, and that's because they've got a really thick waxy leaf, and some of them have serrated edges, meaning that slugs and snails leave them alone. But the other beauty about Epimediums is that they flower early spring, and the flowers, in my opinion, look a little bit like bats hanging off little wires. They're absolutely gorgeous. Most people don't know they exist, so get some in your gardens and tell your friends. Now, the next plant genus are probably plants that you've already grown or you know about because they're really popular and common, and that's lavender. Now, would you believe it, slugs and snails hate lavender because it's really aromatic and the leaves have a high oil content to them, which are two things that slugs and snails really don't care for. Lavender are super easy to grow, providing that you give them full sun and free draining conditions. Meaning that if you're a bit of a lazy gardener, you don't often get out watering your plants, lavender could be the choice for you. Now, there are literally hundreds of different species, cultivars and hybrids of lavender, meaning that there's always a flower, a colour and a shape form for you, and it's well worth doing your research. But lavender is a wonderful slug-proof plant, and then you can cut all the flowers off at the end of the season and use them indoors to perfume your rooms or make aromatherapy oils. A really fantastic plant that slugs hate. Now, a really unusual prickly plant specimen are the Eryngiums, also known as sea holly, and these are a really tough and quite arresting plant. When you see them, you think, what on earth is that? They've got these really spiky blue and pale silver leaves that are super tough, meaning that slugs and snails do not stand a chance. But Eryngiums or sea holly are fantastic plants for coastal or exposed gardens. They like full sun and they'll quite happily be battered by coastal winds, salty exposure without even batting an eyelid. They've got these gorgeous star-shaped flowers that are super tough, and they make excellent cut garden flowers. So why not give Eryngiums a try today? The final plant is Nepeta, also known as the catmint. And this is part of the mint family, and you can tell by the square shape of the stems. And when you crush the leaves, you're going to get this minty, almost citrusy aroma. And that's something that slugs and snails really like. Nepeta forms a really nice mound as a herbaceous perennial, meaning it will bulk up, and if you've got full sun or an awkward corner that just gets totally frazzled, Nepeta will love it. You hack them back in February and then they come back year after year. You can cut and dry them for aromatherapy. They look wonderful, they've got these gorgeous purple flowers, and they will really be of benefit and of value in any sunny garden. And best of all, the slugs and snails will leave them well alone. Have you got gardening questions that you need answers for? Well, why not head over to the Garden Ninja forum on my blog, where you can ask me anything about gardens, plants and garden design. There's a whole army of other garden ninjas there that can help provide answers to your questions. It's a really great way to meet the other ninjas, so head over there now. So there we have it, 15 plants that are going to be slug proof and pretty much bomb proof in your gardens. If you've liked this video guide, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, where there are hundreds of garden design hints, tips and hacks to help you make your gardens awesome. I've been Lee Burkhill, a Garden Ninja. I hope to see you over on my blog gardenninja.co.uk soon. Bye for now.